Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the EBI Women in STEM seminar series. Our guest speaker today is Jingbo Wang, who is a postdoctoral researcher here at the Lawrence Berkeley National Labs that specializes in membrane separation technologies. Hello, Jingbo. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So today we're going to be really trying to understand the basics of the topics that Jimbo specialized in and how it can have an impact on energy or climate, but also we're going to touch on her career and experiences so far. So first, we're going to talk about some background on the science involved in your research.
Sure.
So on a very basic level, what is a membrane?
So yeah, that's a great question. So for a membrane, it's actually a kind of selective material. It is designed in a way that it only allows something to pass through, at the same time would stop the others.
Okay, perfect. And how does researching membranes help with the problems we have?
Yeah, so membrane separation processes are widely used in industrial applications these days. For example, desalination, we can use membrane process to turn seawater into drinking water. Also, carbon capture with all the climate change and global warming issues we're facing. Membrane separation processes can help remove CO2 from the atmosphere. Also, in chemical or pharmaceutical industry, when people need a certain product with great purity, membrane separation processes can help to get rid of the impurities from products. Also, in energy applications, membranes are also widely used. For example, lithium batteries, we probably use every day in a lot of the devices, and there are membranes involved in those batteries as well.
And why are these, although you mentioned it's very clear why they're important, but why should we care?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I said, membrane processes are widely used these days, meaning that some of the membrane separation processes are very established and we are already using it. With these types of technology, what researchers in the membrane field are trying to do is to optimize the process, meaning that we want to make the whole process more efficient or make it cheaper so that it can be even widely used for other applications as well.
And when thinking about how to make these processes better, what does optimizing a membrane mean or really look like?
Yeah, sure. So the membranes we use these days usually look like a piece of paper, but there is so much chemistry and material science go into the design of the membrane. As I mentioned, that it is designed to be a material that's very selective. So depending on the purpose, what we're trying to separate, for example, in desalination, we're trying to separate salts, ions, or other contaminants from water. So the membrane really needs to be designed in a way that allows water to go through really fast, at the same time stop any other things. So there's a lot of engineering and material science going into the thinking of how do we make this kind of material, and that's on the material side. And when we eventually put this material into a general process, the process of running the membrane separation always requires a lot of driving force. It can be pressure, it can be heat, it can be electricity, which all involves the energy input to the whole process. So when we talk about optimization, usually these are the two directions we're looking at, either trying to improve the material to be highly selective to something, or trying to make the whole process cheaper and more energy efficient.
Perfect. And what does that necessarily mean for somebody, for example, like myself, that doesn't know or really understand the science behind certain processes that we partake in every day?
Yeah, the technology is so great these days. We probably take a lot of things for granted. For example, drinking water. In fact, with a conventional water treatment process, we can only have fresh water as the water source to treat it, make it potable. Although that is not the case with a lot of the places in the world, not everywhere has access to fresh water, but we do have a lot of seawater on the planet. And that's when, actually California as a great example, we actually used to import a lot of water from hundreds of miles away to get to our tap. But now we can just directly get water from the ocean, which is right next to us, and then make that drinking water purity. So I think for a lot of things, we probably don't really think about the science and engineering that we're putting into the process just because it's already working great. And there were so many other scientists and engineers working behind the scenes to make this happen.
Perfect. I know it's very easy to take certain things for granted, especially when you don't understand the science behind it. Is this research still fairly new? And if so, and even if it's not new, what gaps or barriers are there in your development preventing your research to be put to use?
Yeah, so for the membrane field, for desalination purpose per se, it's already established. It was invented around 1960s, and it's already a pretty mature technology. But as I mentioned, there are other problems associated with the whole operation. For example, if you recall, the membrane only allows water to go through, stop the other contaminants. That means that the contaminants will accumulate on the membrane surface. That requires a lot of cleaning, and for a very long time, if the membrane degrades after the cleaning, you have to replace it. So that is associated with the cost of the whole project as well. So in terms of that, that line of research for desalination, it's more of the optimization of the process to make it cheaper. So for something else, for example, when I mentioned that membrane processes can also be used for carbon capture, that is a relatively new direction, which is my current project. So in that way, in that sense, we're trying to figure out how exactly to make it work to begin with in the lab, and then thinking about optimization compared to a more established technology like desalination membranes.
Okay, so really it's just making what we have better, more cost efficient, and more efficient in general to withstand a lot more than the current processes in place.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good summary.
Perfect. Why, or better, would you encourage students to study this in the future, and how would you do that?
Yeah, so personally, I'm very passionate about sustainability. And in general, I have this hope of having a more sustainable society where we can still have the convenience of our life as we do today, at the same time do not interfere with the environment too much, because essentially we take everything from the environment, water, seawater, and human activities do have certain things to affect the environment, which I hope that's minimal or at least compatible with the environment. So yeah, I would be very encouraging people who are interested in sustainability or similar things to get into STEM, especially environmental engineering or chemical engineering, to help with solving the problems.
Perfect, yes. And I think it's extremely admirable, by the way, to think that way. So the next few questions are about your career as a researcher, which I'm sure our audience is very curious about. How did you become a postdoc at LBNL, and what is LBNL?
Yeah, so LBNL stands for Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. This is where I work right now. I actually have it on my background as well. So I graduated from my PhD program in 2018 from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Back then, I had a career path in mind that I want to stay in academia, become a professor. That's why I decided to go to UCLA actually for my first postdoc position. And there I was able to start working on different projects and work with different people. And then that kind of opened my mind to encourage myself to explore a little bit more about career options. Academia is not the only way after you get a PhD. And that's when I got in touch with my current supervisor, where he's working on carbon capture related projects. And he really needed to hire somebody who has a strong membrane background to optimize the process. That's how I came here eventually.
Perfect. And what was the process like for you as a graduate from another country?
Yeah, so I'm original from China. So I was very interested in getting into the graduate school experience in the US. So that's why I came for the PhD program to begin with. So I would say getting a postdoc here from an American institution is relatively straightforward because I already had my adjustments with the culture and then the whole education system while I was already in my PhD. So I was fortunate to have that. And in terms of national labs specifically, sometimes there are more than just Berkeley National Labs across the country, depending on the research, the nature of the research. whether it's related to national security or something. Sometimes they require a little bit more clearance for non-citizens. So it really depends on the position and the specific national lab we're talking about. So if you're interested in that route, you should probably research that a little bit for the specific project and national labs. According to my own experience, among all the national labs, Berkeley National Lab is the relatively more friendly one towards non-citizens. They tend to do a little bit more research related to energy sustainability, which is they have a lot of openings to non-citizens as well.
Perfect. And why did you choose academia instead of industry?
That's a great question. I think for everyone who's trying to decide their career professions in the long run, there's always a lot of thought going to the soul searching process, I like to call it. So for me, I was determined to become a professor when I started PhD because I love doing research. I love solving problems. So I thought that was a very logical way to go. But then gradually, after doing more fundamental research and doing some applied research, I actually realized that I love to see the more direct impact of my research, which is not typical for a lot of research coming from the lab to be scaled up and then really applied in industry. So I think at this point, I'm happy where I am going through all the process and working with all the people I worked with and working on the project I had access to. But I think for my near future, I'm probably more interested in the research position in industry.
Perfect. And what made you decide to study in STEM? Were you ever interested in choosing another field?
Yeah, so growing up, my parents were both working in the STEM field, one engineer, one scientific professor. So I guess STEM was in my genes growing up. So I'm always interested in that. When I was in college, I actually got interested in social science as well. So I took law as my second major. So I did learn social science. I would say it's great. That experience helped me to approach problems from different perspectives, from both a social science perspective and engineering perspective. I love that experience, but I think by comparison, my passion is still in the technical part, was trying to use science and engineering to solve some more practical problems.
Perfect. So this is our last question. What would be one piece of guidance you would want to tell your younger self and or other young people and women in STEM?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I would tell my younger self to be more confident and more patient, because with every big decision along our life, I feel like I always was impatient about, oh, I don't know what this is going to lead to, if I wasn't sure if I'm going to make it, or those kind of thoughts. But I think looking back to a younger self, I will probably tell her that everything is going to be okay. Just follow your passion, pursue your dream. It's going to be great. And in general, I think that's probably applies to a lot of women in STEM field as well. As I talk to other female colleagues, I think confidence could really help us get a long way, and then really helping each other and build your network and develop allies in your professional career, that can really go a long way.
Perfect. Well, first, thank you so much for such a great conversation. It's truly admirable to see a woman so accomplished in your career so early on. You're a great example for future women looking to enter the STEM field. I, alongside EBI, would like to thank you for your time and wisdom. We look forward to seeing what comes next for you and your membranes, and we wish you the best of luck in all your future endeavors.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you all for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, as well as click the bell to be notified for our next interview. Our socials are linked here as well as on our website. If you're interested in climate change, renewable energy, biosciences, and all that comes with that, and also looking to see what career path you would like to take if you're interested in that, we highly recommend checking our socials and website out.